Today is March 25th, 2024. My name is Rob Carr of Kalamazoo Right to Life. This is Pro-Life Week. Well, tomorrow, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to hear oral argument in a very important case dealing with chemical abortion. Remember, chemical abortion, the two-pill regimen, mifepristone and misoprostol. I'm not sure that's pronounced correctly, but basically it stops a normal, healthy pregnancy, and then that second pill forces the woman to expel a dead baby, a dead fetus. And the court, the district court judge down in Texas ruled against the FDA's policy. The judge ruled that he felt the FDA erred in bypassing some safety protocols and permitted this drug, I think primarily mifepristone, to be administered. And then that was appealed to the Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit down in New Orleans, and they only partially agreed with the judge. It was appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. So the justices will hear this tomorrow, and they'll probably issue a ruling sometime June or July of this summer. So going back, chemical abortion really was approved by the FDA back in the year 2000, and it was originally approved for use up to the 7th week of pregnancy. But in 2016, during the Obama years, those FDA rulings were relaxed, and chemical abortion was permitted up to the 10th week of pregnancy. And during the last 24 years, chemical abortion has become very popular, unfortunately. I've got some stats here. In the year 2001, so 1 year after it had been approved, 6% of all abortions were chemical abortions. And by the year 2011, that number had grown to 24%. So a quarter of all abortions were chemical abortions in 2011. Then by 2020, it had surged to 53%. So more than half of all abortions. The pro-life movement has been protesting in front of abortion clinics since the 1970s because of surgical abortions, Planned Parenthood clinics, what have you. But with chemical abortion, it kind of removed that issue because a woman could theoretically take those two pills in the privacy of her home. No one knows about it. There's no harassment. There's no protests. There are no sidewalk counselors trying to talk to women about their abortions or about wanting to save their babies. So it was a very private procedure, this chemical abortion. In the year 2023, that number had grown to 63% of all abortions. And that's a staggering number. And I also read too that in 2023, I believe, maybe it was 2022, the number of abortions tipped over 1 million for the whole year. Now, back in 1990, let me back up. Ever since 1973, the number of abortions was steadily increasing, and it peaked in the late 1980s with 1,600,000 abortions. These were surgical abortions. But in 1990, it had plateaued, and it has been going down for the last 30 years. And I think the last number I saw was about maybe 650 to 700,000 abortions per year, which is still a horrible number, but it's nothing like the 1.6 million we had back in 1990. Well, now the numbers are going up again, I think primarily because of the accessibility and the convenience of chemical abortions. So now it's up to just over 1 million. So that's a very disturbing trend, that the number of abortions is now on the upswing. And you have about 14, 15 states where abortion is basically illegal. And many women from some of these red states, these pro-life states, they are moving. They are not physically buying a new house, but they're traveling from their state to a neighboring state. Like I read in places like Indiana or Missouri, pro-life states, many women from these states are traveling to Illinois to receive chemical abortions. So or just abortions in general. So that's a trend that women are moving across state lines to get abortions, especially in states where it's almost impossible to get a legal abortion. Okay. I read just this morning on lifenews.com's website that 1 in 25 women taking chemical abortions, the pills, they end up in the emergency room. So that's 4% of all women. Now, you may not say that's a lot of people, but you multiply that by the tens of millions of women who are getting chemical abortions, and that's a lot of women who are ending up with major medical complications and are forced to go to hospital emergency rooms. So that is a factor, that could weigh on how the justices view this case. It might. I'm not saying it will, but it might. We'd like to think the court's going to do something major for these two abortion pills, but don't be disappointed if we don't get everything we want. I mean, we didn't really get everything we wanted with Dobbs, did we? Because ultimately we really wanted to see abortion outlawed, illegal in the whole country. Babies should be protected regardless of what state they live in. It's great to know that babies in Oklahoma and Indiana and other states are protected, but they're not protected in Illinois and California and New York and Massachusetts, and now in Michigan. So here's a possible ruling. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but this is a possible ruling. The justices, the conservative majority, might rule by saying that because of the Dobbs decision sending the issue of abortion back to the states, this is going to go back to the states as well. It's going to be a state issue. And each individual state is going to be able to make the determination whether or not chemical abortions will be legal in their states. Not saying that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. They would use Dobbs as precedent. If the states can determine abortion policy and chemical abortion is another procedure, well then the state legislatures make that call. It's just a possibility, but don't take that to the bank. Trust me, don't, because this is a little different than the surgical procedures. Because remember, the Dobbs decision was dealing with a 15-week ban. The Mississippi law prevented abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy, and chemical abortions are only up to the 10th week. Now, the court may rule that the 10-week limit needs to be scaled back to the original 7 weeks. That's possible. That's a possibility. That's a good possibility, but the other may not pan out. So that's tomorrow. A big oral argument in Washington at the Supreme Court. To turn a corner, the Kalamazoo Right to Life oratory contest was held this past Saturday. We had 4 contestants, all homeschool kids from Kalamazoo County, and we have a winner, and his name is Xander Yoder from the Richland area. He gave a great speech, but when I was listening to these students give their presentations, every single one of them were great. These were well-crafted, well-written essays. They were articulate, thoughtful, insightful. They really were. And I just in thinking back to my my years in high school, I sure wish that I could have been as eloquent or as prepared as those four students were in articulating a strong, convincing pro-life message. So kudos to all four students, especially to Xander, who was our overall winner. But really, all four of them are winners in my book, every single one of them. And actually, I kind of want to go back to this chemical abortion issue just briefly before I close. Back in the 19th century, really before about 1880, when surgical abortions became safer for the mother. Obviously, it was never safe for the baby, but before 1880, surgical abortions was basically a death sentence because women would have died from perforated uteruses, hemorrhaging, major physical problems. But after 1880, the tools, the instruments used were a little bit, here again, air quotes, safer for the doctor, for the mother. But before 1880, almost all abortions were done by using potions, drugs, herbal concoctions. And a lot of them were kind of advertised as female monthly pills. A way to end a pregnancy. They were all these euphemistic terms, female pills, and I somehow find that this chemical abortion issue we're dealing with today has kind of gone back to what the practice was, the predominant practice was back in 1850, where you had primarily women abortionists. The most famous one was a woman in New York City called Madame Restel. A lot of these people took some French fake names just to make them sound more professional. Her name was Anna Lohman. She was from England, but she was an immigrant. She started a practice in New York City, made millions of dollars, but she didn't perform abortions by using surgical means. It was all done through potions, herbs, concoctions, things like that. So somehow I found the chemical abortion concept today is, in a sense, going back in a pre-surgical abortion period where you're now back to potions and pills, and that's what we're dealing with now. It may not be an herb or some kind of a root from a plant, but it's now done through these two drugs, mifepristone and misoprostol. So I'll just get to end with that thought. Be praying for the Supreme Court that they make the right decision in this case. With that, I'll let you go, and I'll see you next time.